Have you noticed that the past few years, ever since 2016, I mean, the polling for political, especially presidential and primaries, has really been way off, and it's really been skewed, towards the Republican Party. It's really interesting because I asked myself at this point, there's clearly a trend there where the, more liberal or Democratic side is being completely underestimated. Why would that be? And I think the main thing is that it's because of the polling methods. I mean, who's answering a call from an unknown number or from a, random caller talking about politics? If you're younger or, you're working, you're not doing that kind of thing, at least not with any type of regularity. But if you're older, again, you typically have, just statistically are more likely to have a more conservative lean to you. And so, potentially that is what's skewing the polling. It's really crazy to see because it's been consistent. The hard part for me to fathom is that with all of that, that dynamic going on, that there's still so much, fear that needs to be spread by both sides, not just the Republican Party, but also the Democratic Party, or, the liberal side of the aisle, kind of, playing up that fear that, hey, you better go out and vote and do those kind of things. I get it. The only way to win elections is to turn out, period. You don't turn out, no matter what your beliefs are, you're not going to have the outcome that you desire. But the thing is that at a certain point, I mean, it's pretty detrimental, over the long term to constantly live in a kind of a fear, dominated environment. And I think this is kind of where we've come to in this society with, election after election. Now, hopefully, if Trump doesn't win this next election, hopefully, his whole cause at that point has to get abandoned by the Republican Party. Will it? I don't know. But they've consistently lost everything since he, won the presidency. They've lost every midterm. They lost the presidency. They lost everything, pretty much. Remember the red wave that was just going to dominate, and it rolled up somewhere out in the middle of the ocean. These kind of things, while they may not seem like a big deal, they are important because, again, my question is, who takes the mantle after Trump? Who's going to come in with that level of, audacity to just kind of speak their mind of random crazy things? The hard part with Trump, though, is that with someone who has no shame, there's very little, mechanism to combat that. When someone, it's kind of like, think about it like the terrorist war, like Iraq, Afghanistan. If someone's committed to die and they're not afraid of that, it's very hard to fight an enemy that's committed like that. And the same thing with someone who has no shame. They'll say anything and do anything at any time to, again, get your vote, to convince you. That's a very hard, enemy to go up against. But that is where we are. I mean, Trump really at this point basically has no moral compass whatsoever. He will say or do anything, to get what he wants. And all he cares about at the end of the day is himself. But it's interesting because, it is taking a toll on the guy. You can see it, you can hear it. He's not the guy that he was, not even close. And, all of this stress and everything, you can see that it's taking him down a path that I think, at a certain point he won't recover from. But this is where we are. And it's important because, again, at the end of the day, to come for the future of, our society to come down to these things is pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting to see, like, for me, to think of how many people are on the other side of the spectrum that are just like, oh my God, I love Trump. I can't imagine, worshiping a president, particularly an ex-president, to that level. But that's where we are. Something that we, need to take seriously. It is a threat. I mean, realistically, it is one of the biggest threats we've seen in quite a while to kind of how everything works. Anyone who talks about, suspending the Constitution how did we get here? How did we get here? How did we go from people who used to worship Reagan and, blah, 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 America, blah, 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 to, someone who's willing to tear up the Constitution if he doesn't get what he wants? It's a crazy world, but that's where we are.